say yeah. Say it again, say yeah. Somebody say yeah for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You look good out there, baby. I was born by the river in a little tent. Oh, just like the river I've been running ever since. It's been a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Look here. It's been too hard living, and I'm afraid to die. Look here. 'Cause I don't know what's up there beyond the sky. It's been a long, I wish I could come out there where you are, baby. A long time coming, but I know, look at here, a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Look at here. Let me say one more thing. I go to the movie and I go downtown. But all I can hear is somebody keep telling me, oh boy, don't hang around. It's been a long. If anybody know what I'm talking about, let me see you wave your hand. I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. But I've got to take my time and say this, look. Then I go to my brother. Yes, sir. And I tell him, I said, brother, help me please. But he winds up knocking me. He knocks me back down on my. Oh, there's been times that I thought. Somebody say yeah. I can last long. I'm able to carry on. It's been a long, good God Almighty, a long time coming, but I know a change gonna come. Oh, yes it will. Look at here, one more time, look. Then I go to my brother. Somebody take your hand back and forth like this. Everybody. You sitting in the first balcony too. Help me, please. All over the auditorium tonight. All over the hallelujah. But he winds up knocking me back down on my knees. That's the times what I thought I couldn't last for long. No, I know, baby,
Yes, Lou?
I think younger kids need to know the value of sacrifice.
Yes, I agree. There is one place they can learn about sacrifice. If they tune in on WMAD and the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass on Monday nights, they can learn. It's informative with current topics. And by the way, the show is hot.
The show is smoking hot.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass. We are honored to have you as a guest tonight and want to thank each of you for your faithful support. Without further delay, allow me to introduce to you Mr. Baron Glass. Mr. Glass, take it away.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass on WMAD 24-hour global radio. Tonight we're going to be joined by Mr. Bob Noel, who is a practicing attorney who's been practicing for about the last 30 years and served as a magistrate judge. So we're going to, without prolonging the show, we're going to go ahead on and introduce Bob. Bob, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we get off into this very hot topic that has just been recently handed down by the United States Supreme Court?
Well, there's nothing like just jumping right into the topic. It's as burning as it gets, and as controversial as any that's ever been decided by the U.S. Supreme Court.
I'll tell you what, Bob. On June the 26th of 2015, the United States became the 21st and most populous country to legalize same-sex marriages. And as a result of the United States Supreme Court's decision in Obergefell versus Hodges, the court ruled that the denial of marriage licenses and recognition to same-sex couples violates the due process and the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution. The ruling overturned a precedent, Baker versus Nelson. Now, starting in 2003, various lower court decisions, state legislation, and popular referendums had already legalized same-sex marriages to some degree in 37 out of 50 United States and one U.S. territory and the District of Columbia. Following the Supreme Court's decision on June the 13th in the decision of United States versus Windsor, the federal government recognized same-sex marriages with federal benefits for married couples connected to either the state of residence or the state in which the marriage was solemnized. Following the decision of Obergefell, same-sex married couples were accorded the same recognition as opposite-sex couples at the federal and state level. Now, we know that gay rights activists, they were thrilled with this opinion, since it represents the most significant progress on their agenda this year. However, many organizations aren't so enthusiastic. We know that there are some religious organizations that are out there, such as the Maryland Catholic Conference, that criticize the opinion as against the institution of marriage. We also know that some of the lawmakers even threaten to pass laws barring the recognition of same-sex marriages performed in other states. Bob, tell us how we got to where we are, if you can, from beginning to end. And Bob is not here tonight to take an opinion for or against. We're going to talk about this topic because it is very complex. It is still very alarming to some, so we want to have a casual conversation from a legal perspective. Bob, take us from there.
Well, first, there was the federal government had never gotten involved in any sort of marriage questions until the late 1960s. 1967, two cases came out of the U.S. Supreme Court that basically used the 14th Amendment to overrule the 10th Amendment, the States' Rights Amendment, by first, in Griswold, allowing for use of contraceptives, because in a lot of states they were illegal to use. And secondly, in a case called Loving versus Virginia, they addressed the issue of the ban on interracial marriage. And especially in the South, it was illegal for people of different races to marry. And the U.S. Supreme Court declared that unconstitutional in 1967, and that opinion, more than any other, opened the door for what came 2 weeks ago. There's no question about that. It opened the door because it conferred jurisdiction over marital relations when it had always been considered a traditional police power of the state. So, Loving was the grandfather of this decision.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you got a lot of angry people over this decision. You have a lot of happy people, a lot of angry people, which is the same thing happened in 1967. There were a lot of very unhappy people when Mr. Loving's conviction for marrying an African-American woman was thrown out. And there are a lot of unhappy people now. Except you add another portion, and that is what is going to be required of people as a result of legalizing same-sex marriages.
Mm-hmm.
One thing is, and let's get this out of the way first, because this is the biggest myth of all, and that is that religious institutions would be required to start performing these ceremonies. Well, they're protected by the First Amendment. They cannot be required to perform these marriage ceremonies, and the most recent case in the U.S. Supreme Court that came out was the Hobby Lobby case 2 years ago, where they said people with deeply held religious convictions could not be forced to engage in something that violated their religious rights. So, in a lot of areas, this really isn't going to affect most people. There are already some denominations, such as the Episcopalian Church, that are performing these types of ceremonies, but other religious denominations won't be forced to, and that's also implicit in the decision as well. Now, the next question is, can I be forced to make that wedding cake or that pizza or whatever? And that's a different question. Again, I would go back to the Hobby Lobby case, and which gives us some guidance that the Supreme Court's not going to suddenly order people to participate in something that they find to be religiously repugnant. So the area that's going to be most affected are going to be people who work for the government, people who issue wedding licenses, people who, as a matter of course, such as justice of the peace, perform marriages. That is the tricky part.
Mm-hmm.
Because I don't think they can use what a private citizen can use, because they've taken an oath of office, and they have to fulfill that oath. As, for instance, a clerk of court, we had dozens of them last week suddenly start issuing marriage licenses. They are required to perform all the ministerial duties, or they're actually criminal penalties in addition to civil penalties for failure to do so, or refusal to do so. So I think that clerks of courts are required under this to issue those marriage licenses. I don't think there's any two ways about that, along with their employees, because they're public servants. They're not private citizens, and they don't have the same work rights as a private citizen would have, and that's going to be the big battleground for the next couple of years.
So, Bob, if we know that in local elections throughout Louisiana and on October 23rd, that clerks of courts, that position is up for grabs. So for those who are out there listening, would it be fair, or would that be a fair question for those who are out there, as far as a voter or a listener, to actually try to find what position that individual that's running for office would take? Because I think you just said that regardless as to what position they may take personally, from a standpoint of violation of the law itself, they can be held criminally and civilly. Would that be correct?
That is absolutely correct. It does. I mean, you can have every clerk and anybody running for clerk of court claim that they're not going to do this, and if they get elected, they're going to do this, or they're going to be removed from office. I mean, and they'll be subjected to both a civil rights lawsuit, something that we call a writ of mandamus, to force them to do it, or even face the possibility of some sort of prosecution, because we actually have laws that require clerks of court to administer to fulfill their job. And that's part of the job duties, is to issue all legal documents that they're required to do. Mm-hmm. Now, they're not performing the marriages. They're not doing anything other than issuing a piece of paper. But they're not going to have that choice. So any candidate out there who says, I'm not going to do this if you elect me, is not going to be in office for very long and will probably be removed fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm. So when we look at this from a local and state standpoint, and then we expand outside of the local and state on a national level, again, regardless as to what my or anybody else's opinion out there is, legally right now, it's the law. So let me ask you this, Bob. In your legal opinion, do you foresee a lot of suits coming out of this particular ruling, or is it something unlike integration back, when they did that, because I believe they failed to have the conversation, and that's the reason why we agreed to have this conversation, regardless as to how uncomfortable it may be, regardless as to what the religious or the belief aspect is. This is now the law of the land by a 5-4 decision, and based on that, criminal and civil penalties can happen for those who refuse to administer that aspect from the legal standpoint.
That's absolutely correct, and that assessment's absolutely correct. There will inevitably be some challenges. I mean, Governor Jindal basically invited clerks of court to defy the rule and promised them free legal counsel. Of course, that's fine and dandy for the governor to throw people under the bus, to further his political ambitions, but because he's not the one who's going to be suffering the consequences. Mm-hmm. But it's basically a no-brainer legally as to whether they will be required to do it. I mean, they're going to be required to do it, and it doesn't matter what their personal feelings are. Mm-hmm. If they're public servants. So
Bob,
do that right when you become a public servant.
Right. So for those who are out there who's basically saying that they feel that their religious belief has been basically trumped by the law itself. From not your personal opinion, from a legal aspect, can you kind of give some guidance and direction on how a person might be able to look at that from a social standpoint? Because once again, unless it's overturned, let me back up a little bit, Bob. To my understanding, there's a 25-day period once the ruling has taken effect, if there are any appeals or anything like that. Could you address that issue?
Sure, that's called rehearing, but there's absolutely no chance that it's going to be overturned. They have 5 solid votes. Kennedy is not going to change his opinion. He was the swing vote, the lone conservative that voted with that majority, and it'd be foolhardy to think that they're going to change their mind by the end of July. It's not going to happen.
Right.
And Justice Kennedy has always had a proclivity for voting in favor of gay rights, so it was no surprise when this decision came out. I mean, that's the reason why you saw Representative Johnson from Bossier introduce the quote-unquote religious freedom bill, which actually did absolutely nothing, because we passed a religious freedom bill 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. So I mean, it was didn't really do anything that would have affected anything. Mm-hmm. But I mean, that's the reason why that legislation in our state and other states was attempted. Now, we have a strong business community in Louisiana that was definitely against that type of action, simply because of how much money that we stand to lose on tourism. Mm-hmm. The city of New Orleans alone has a large celebration and a whole weekend in the first week of September, where they basically market to the LGBT community, and they'd be losing millions of dollars by boycotts. And that's why Indiana caved as well. Indiana passed a bill. It was a boycott began, and basically that bill went bye-bye very quickly. So, I mean, there are a lot of different issues that may arise, and there are a lot of legal issues that are going to arise because now you're going to be opening the door for adoptions in Louisiana. There'll be prenups that will be drafted. There'll be divorces. The first gay divorce has already been filed. It was as a result of an out-of-state marriage. You'll be dealing with issues of child custody, spousal support. I mean, this is not to mention the actual challenges of the law, inevitable challenges that you're going to get over issues of religious freedom or versus basically a conflicting rights type of thing. In other words, this law has been going to be a huge moneymaker for lawyers for the next 10 years.
Correct. And I'll tell you, Bob, let's look at it from a societal standpoint. If there is a business that is out there, a public entity, and this activity, and when I say this activity, I'm talking, it's now legal, so you will see male to male, female to female, or whatever the case may be. Do they, and if so, do they have the right to refuse services to those individuals? And if not, I would assume that is a classic civil rights lawsuit. Would that be correct, or how would that work? I
would think that's something that hasn't been completely tested yet. I think that the Hobby Lobby case is going to weigh very heavily on that. And if those people out there aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, the Hobby Lobby case, when Obamacare was passed, they had a provision that required employers to pay for contraceptives. Hobby Lobby challenged that and successfully won at the U.S. Supreme Court that to provide those types of services violated their deeply held religious beliefs. And that case is definitely going to be cited or quoted in future challenges to people providing services to the LGBT community, and as well as this case being cited as a civil rights issue. It's going to be we're going to be litigating. The litigation is far from over as far as those types of things that are going to be happening out in the culture. If anything, it will be expanding now.
Right, and the reason why I asked that, Bob, is because I have heard personally individuals who have indicated and given that flexibility that if that were to happen within their specific business, then based on their religious belief, they would deny that person access to whatever it is that they serve. Now, when we look at the adoption standpoint, let's take a heterosexual relationship, and there's a divorce, and as a result of the divorce, one or the other becomes involved in the same-sex marriage, and then you get off into the custody issue. It would seem to me that the other parent who was continued to remain heterosexual, it would seem to me, Bob, that this is going to be like a lightning rod, not just in one state, but I'm talking about every particular parish or county, within states, as you indicated, for a long time, if you look at it from a societal standpoint. What is your take on that?
Oh, there's absolutely no question about that, Baron. I mean, those issues have already come up in Louisiana courts in the past. There's been conflicting cases on it. Because it's always going to be what's in the best interest of the child. But now, with this ruling, all that's going to be re-questioned. We're going to be revisiting all that litigation all over again. And that's going to me, that's going to be decided largely on a case-by-case basis. But what we're going to be looking at is, since this is a 14th Amendment issue now, we're going to be looking at redefining what is in the best interest of the child in a lot of areas, especially in more conservative areas. I mean, we're all past decisions in this area are now going to come into play. They're going to be relitigated. I mean, it's going to be a very interesting time for any judges that sit on family law cases.
Right.
No question about it.
Right. I'll tell you, Bob, I have this. It says, calling something marriage does not make it marriage. Marriages have always been a covenant between a man and a woman, which is by its nature ordered toward the procreation and education of children and the unity and well-being of the spouses. The promoters of same-sex marriages propose something entirely different. They propose the union between two men or two women. This denies the self-evident biological, philosophical, and psychological differences between men and women which find their complementary in marriage. It also denies the specific primary purpose of marriage itself, the perpetuation of the human race and the raising of children. Two entirely different things cannot be considered the same thing. Having said that, what happens when there is a judge that's on the bench who has those religious beliefs that, for whatever reason, cannot rule in favor of the same-sex situation? And we're basically dealing with hypotheticals, but what I'm trying to do is put out all of these possibilities so people can become aware of the situation, because most people are going to be like, and the reason why I say this, Bob, when I talk to individuals from the 50s and the 60s era, they indicated to me that the conversation failed to happen during that time. And I feel incumbent on us nowadays in 2015, the 21st century, we have to talk about this regardless as to how complicated it is. What's your take?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about raising children. Mm-hmm. Now, the question is going to be is the decision going to rest solely, well, there are things called courts of appeal. Mm-hmm. It may or may not. I think that every case is going to be should be looked at on an individual basis. The religious we do have some judges who either on both sides mm-hmm. play politics with this and ignore and may very well ignore the actual facts of that individual situation. Now, the definitions of marriage, well, of course, we all know what the traditional definition of marriage is, mm-hmm. although there are a lot of heterosexual couples that, of course, get married with no intention of procreating. Mm-hmm. Canada and Western Europe, for the most part, is, we should look at a lot of what they're doing in the way of how they formulated their laws, because they've been dealing with this. They've legalized this a few years ago, so it gives us some guidance at least. But I think that when it comes to this sort of litigation, it's the battleground is going to be tough. The appellate courts are going to be highly active because you'll have conservative judges who will rule one way, liberal judges who will rule another way, mm-hmm. and it's going to come down to what the individual situation is, what they believe to be in the best interest of any child that's involved, and the appellate courts are going to have to lay down a whole bunch of new rules for us that may eventually be litigated again in federal court on the 14th Amendment argument. So it's a mess. Right.
So Bob, for those who may be older or those who may not really understand the legal ramifications of the 14th Amendment, explain to them specifically what the 14th Amendment says and how this relates to this particular case here.
Well, we're talking about one clause of the 14th Amendment that grants due process to all citizens of the United States. See, the 14th Amendment came about right after the Civil War and was aimed directly at freedmen who had just gained their freedom, to ensure that individual states couldn't draft laws that, for all intensive purposes, would have made them slaves again, and that their rights as citizens of the United States could not be abridged by any state law. Now, that was honored in the breach throughout the entire Jim Crow era, and the 14th Amendment really didn't get any steam till the 1950s and 60s, mm-hmm. when we starting with Brown versus Board for school integration, and continuing with challenges to discrimination in housing, in marriage with Loving versus Virginia. As I said at the very beginning of the program, prior to 1967, the federal government had never been involved in anyone's marriage. That only came about as a result of a 14th Amendment argument over the denial of equal protection and denying people the right to marry who they wanted to marry, even if that person were of the opposite color or of a different color.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why that's the basis of the jurisdiction for this suit. In other words, there are a lot of analogies that go back to interracial marriages back in the 1960s. Prior to 1967 in Louisiana, it would have been impossible for spouses of different races. I mean, absolutely impossible. It was illegal. People would have gone to jail for performing the marriage and for marrying.
Mm-hmm.
Loving was a case out of Virginia where a white man married a black woman and was arrested and prosecuted for it. And that's the analogy that we have here.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
I think what has more people offended more than anything else,
right,
the term marriage,
mm-hmm.
and all of the different laws that apply to when two people get married, including community property laws, because that's what the big hang-up is really about.
Mm-hmm.
It's not so much the fact that people are together, because some people, I think there are some people that have no problem with civil unions, but have problems with the use of the term marriage.
Right.
So what we have is a definition problem, and a definition problem that is offensive to some people, but is absolutely necessary for others.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime we have conflicts like that, that's when the courts. You have to have a controversy to have a lawsuit, and that's why we're where we're at today.
So Bob, is it going to be? You know that in any workplace, people can holler or scream, discrimination any day of the week.
Yeah.
Is it going to be fairly simple or more simple now for same-sex couples to basically look at discrimination? Because when you look at it from a statistical standpoint, it's about a 50-50 split, or give or take, one side or the other. So would they have I guess I would say, quote-unquote, more valid claim? Because it's going to be obvious that people do not like this, and they're going to basically voice that to other people. So when we look at all of these maybe violation of civil rights lawsuits, do you foresee that coming down the pipeline as well?
Yes, I think we're looking at about 5 to 10 years of litigation. Depends. Just think of it this way: how far that the country has come on this issue in the last 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
In 2000, a large contributor to John Kerry losing the presidential race in 2004 was the fact that gay marriage was on the ballot in Ohio. It brought a lot of evangelical Christians out to vote against it, and helped to put the state in George Bush's column. Well, here we are. It was inconceivable that any state other than Massachusetts and Hawaii would approve this type of arrangement.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are 11 years later, just prior to the U.S. Supreme Court ruling. There were 37 states with same-sex marriage. 37 out of 50.
Mm-hmm.
So, obviously, the culture is changing. For good, for bad, it depends upon your point of view.
Mm-hmm. So,
anytime you have that type of a huge change
right.
in the culture, you're going to have fights in court, fights over rights, either defending a right or attack, or preventing the spread of a right.
Mm-hmm.
Either way, and that's where lawyers come into play.
Right. So Bob, when we look back, I think legally, states must give what you call full faith and credit to the laws of other states. Is that one of the reasons why we ended up here? Because if you take Massachusetts for an example, if they were able to get married there, but then they came to Louisiana prior to the court's ruling, they would have not. Louisiana would have not recognized that as a divorce. How would that have worked? Because I'm trying to draw the distinction between where we were at back then and how we got here now. What is to come from this point on?
Well, actually, that issue was being settled on was the granting of full faith and credit on same-sex marriages in other states had already been basically addressed in most courts, especially in the granting rights. If you'd obtained, for instance, in Massachusetts, had obtained a right to, a right to part of your spouse's pension, and part of that plan was in Louisiana, you were still would have been allowed the same rights in Louisiana because they had to recognize that right because of the full faith and credit clause. Mm-hmm. And that had already been decided prior to this decision on same-sex marriage, so it was already out there. So this is basically taking a step far forward or backward, depending upon your point of view,
right,
from the full faith and credit. I mean, this is a huge move into that realm. But it opens a lot of questions.
Right, but Bob, with some people in the legal community, has it always been? And I think you said it earlier, and this will probably be the third time you said it. Didn't the states have the authority to do this, and now what the federal government has come in, they have come in and actually superseded what state law is or was?
They have in the 13 states that have not recognized it, and as a 14th Amendment violation. Mm-hmm.
So
I think that also the fact that 37 states already had it had to have influenced the majority as well. I mean, because when you have that many states in the yes column, you have a problem telling them that they can't, and the fact that you have a mobile society that moves from state to state, you have trouble because of the full faith and credit clause, where one state has got to recognize the legal acts of another. That was inevitable. I mean, I think even the people. I think everybody who's been litigating these issues saw this coming.
Mm-hmm. So when we look at this from the standpoint of the country, and we know that it's law. Now, so those who out there can understand the same rights and privileges that a man and a woman had, regardless as to community property, whatever the case may be. All of that is afforded to same-sex couples as a result of the most recent ruling. Correct?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay. Now, when we look at, let's say, the United States Senate or the United States Congress, there's absolutely nothing that they can do by way of creating another law that would trump this law that's here now, right?
No, the only thing it would take would be a constitutional amendment,
which would
and that's not even the realm of possibility, because 2/3 of the states already favored same-sex marriage.
Mm-hmm. So this is basically a law that's etched in stone, and whether somebody agrees or disagrees with it, it's going to be almost impossible to overturn.
It is impossible to overturn.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so what I'm trying to point out is, if a person is out there on the strong religious aspect and says that this is my belief, I'm never going to accept it, or whatever the case may be, and that's fine and dandy. But as far as the law and seeing this on a day-to-day basis, just like heterosexual relationship, this is now a part of what exists as reality in the United States.
Absolutely.
Okay, and when we look at from a social issue regarding schools, is there any legal, not that you're giving advice, but from a conversational standpoint, because I venture to say that schools will end up having problems or issues out of parents who may find out that their child is in Johnny's or Susan's classroom, and as a result of that, Johnny and Susan may be in same-sex marriage. And again, I can see all of this coming down, and this is why I stress. And I'm glad that I seen the comments that were made the other night. As a matter of fact, Friday night, on your social media page. We must have this conversation. Now, when it comes to those churches, I would venture to say that there's going to have to be a great conversation, and it's going to have to be from the leadership role of the pastor to understand that this is going to happen. It's something that's complex, and it's really, Bob. I'm still trying to digest what's the appropriate question and what's not, because right now you don't want to offend somebody because it is the law of the land, regardless as to what you feel about it.
Well, the thing is that the churches will have to have their own conversations. I don't think, and they have the right to their beliefs. Absolutely, and the right to their form of worship as well. And nobody can take away that right. And there's, we have a First Amendment that protects their right of the free practice of their religion. When you're doing things in terms of religious organizations, I don't see any change whatsoever. Big battleground is going to come in the public sphere. I agree. There's a possibility that we could have issues involving public schools. There are issues that certainly in the ministerial duties of clerks. There are other issues that may pop up, and we're just going to have to deal with them as they come up. And the way the law works is they don't deal with it until they actually have a case. So I mean that's where we're headed.
Right.
Those are battles that we're going to be fighting, depending upon who you're representing and what side that you're representing in any particular fight.
Right. Well, Bob, I think one thing that we have clarified tonight is that regardless as to who is running and what office they are running for, if there's a promise from this person that they are going to do this or they are going to do that regarding the most recent ruling, that's almost 100% not the case, because based on what you said, the majority of the states already were in favor of same-sex marriage. So constitutional amendment was the only way, and that appears not to be the case from this point on unless things change, which would be, I would venture to say, years down the road. And I'm looking at maybe another generation before it would even be thought of as being changed.
You and I won't be practicing law when that happens.
Correct. Well, and that's the thing, Bob. The point is that you are directly involved. From that standpoint, I'm advocating the conversation because, again, when you look at from a societal standpoint, when you look at it from a religious standpoint, and then you look at it from a legal standpoint, you have like all three entities that are conflicting unless you are either on the one side or the other. So what I'm trying to get out now is that the acceptance, it's a must. Otherwise, you're going to live probably a miserable life. Now, you still can have and maintain your religious belief, and that's okay. But when it comes to the law itself, you must comply with this law. Otherwise, you're facing civil and legal ramifications regarding a lawsuit.
That's absolutely correct.
So when we look at law school students now, from the ruling on out, what do you think professors are going to, how do you think they're going to be able to teach this application of the law? Because I would venture to say, even though it has been litigated from, the lower level standpoint and then on through the appellate level, would you say that it's like reinventing something that, not reinventing, actually, you're inventing something that has never taken place? What's your take on that, Bob? It's a comical way, but I mean, we got to be serious about it.
Well, basically, it's what you're doing is you're telling that, I'll be instructing my students, because I teach constitutional law, that basically this is an expansion of an earlier line of cases from the 1960s, and that that all in anything, the Supreme Court, nothing lasts forever. You have to look at what real world. The chances of that changing anytime soon are very doubtful. But you have to look at what are the real world applications. How do you apply this stuff?
Right.
What are the issues that you're going to have to be dealing with? And you go from there. If you the biggest battlegrounds are going to be over things such as custody. I think you'll see more of that than you will. I think this whole stuff about officials refusing to do things will be over by January 1st. I think that because, and like I said earlier, you have a lot of people who are going to promise a lot of stuff that they cannot fulfill. It just doesn't work that way.
Right.
But I think the real battles are going to come in issues of custody. You may have some fights over things in public schools, but I don't think you're going to have that many. I think the real, once the dust settles on this decision, it's more of a political fight for the 2016 presidential race and congressional races.
Correct.
But even then, I don't foresee anything changing dramatically. We're going to be litigating a lot of the details around this. And I say we, I mean that as lawyers in general. We'll be litigating those details, and then, we'll see how the courts deal with it.
So, Bob, when we look at these elections coming up, I venture to say that those who are running, and I'm not insinuating that they should or they shouldn't. This is just a conversation. Because the LBG, that community is large, and the president was able to recognize and understand that because he went in advocating that those were the things that he were going to do, and it helped him out. So when you look at now and fast forwarding, when you're running for Congress, the Senate, or whatever the case may be, if you come out against this particular community, you basically have a standard chance of not being elected. Wouldn't you think that would be a fair assessment of that?
Well, it depends upon what kind of district you're running from. I think in the near future, it depends upon the demographics. If you have a large community and a fairly liberal base, that will be the case. If you're running from a very conservative district with a large evangelical base, you'll lose. And it's going to be that polarized. I think, we've been railing about this decision, but there was actually, in the long run, a far larger decision that occurred the same day, and that was to allow for
Right, and I'm glad that you said that, because I was going to go to that area. When you look at some of the red states, and guess what? There are those who come from this community that are in the red states. So when you look at from a realistic standpoint, it's going to be a nightmare until people learn and decide that the conversation is a must. And it does not matter how complicated it is. It does not matter one way or the other. This is going to be the issue. And you may as well get ready for it. So when you look at it from a legal standpoint, Bob, from your perspective, do you feel like this is going to come sooner rather than later, or you think it's going to be basically a year or so down the road, or these cases are going to start coming in within the next let's say 6 months to a year or slightly after?
I think we're going to look at in the next we're going to start seeing them in the next 6 months to a year. We're going to be seeing, and they won't hit the appellate courts for the most part until maybe as the earliest next summer. But after then we'll see, then after we get through the first few decisions, then I think you'll see things start to peter off after a while.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Bob, and this is just a question that was submitted. Is there a way where can a lawyer refuse to handle a same-sex marriage case?
Sure, people do it all the time.
Okay, and that would not be discrimination?
No, I mean, basically you choose who you want to represent. And should the lawyer be sued as a basis for that? The same argument would apply that applies to the Hobby Lobby case.
Mm-hmm.
I think that nobody can be forced to participate in a ceremony. Now, the ceremony is one thing. Can you refuse essential services solely because someone is a member of that community?
Mm-hmm.
And by that, I mean, can you refuse emergency room medical treatment? Can you refuse food? Things of that nature? I think the answer to that's absolutely not.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that as far as participation in, participation in things such as a marriage ceremony, nah.
Mm-hmm. And the reason why I ask is because I know that you take a strong, Baptist, for example, and their belief is just what it is. And that person, practices law, and they refuse to do this because of their belief. And I'm one of those guys, Bob, who feel like everybody should be entitled as a human to all things regarding, the civil rights of this country. And I also feel that a person can still have their strong religious conviction without giving up that, even though this is the law of the land. So I wanted to make sure that everybody who listened in on the broadcast would get a clear understanding from a legal standpoint that no one is trying to force you to change what your religious beliefs are. However, whatever the law of the land is, regardless of whether you feel it's contrary to the teaching of or outside of that, if you don't do or apply the law, then in certain cases, civil and criminal penalties can pretty much exist.
That is correct.
Okay. Well, Bob, I'll tell you, we're looking at about 8:20 p.m. Central Standard Time. We're looking at about 5 minutes left in the broadcast. Is there anything else that you'd like to touch that we have not touched that you'd like to? Because, again, I want to make sure that no gossip is out there. We have heard this from an individual who teaches constitutional law, who has been practicing law for 30-plus years and sat in as a magistrate judge. So it's not some fly-by-night type of information. This is accurate information. So is there anything else you'd like to add?
Well, basically, that people should, number one, be a little bit more calm, that if they use common sense, that very little of this will ever really affect them. There are very few people that will be affected. I think this is more of a case that people are offended by a concept as opposed to that actually affecting their real lives.
Mm-hmm.
I think the issues that are truly going to come about are going to be resolved in court, and I think they're going to be resolved basically on an individual basis, as opposed to any further broadening of rights, with a few exceptions. I mean, employment rights and benefits have been addressed in the past and will probably be addressed in the future. Other than that, if people will, people need to approach this in a calm fashion and a reasonable fashion. And I think that I hope the American public does so.
Mm-hmm.
But
Okay.
in any event, and the vast majority of people, this isn't going to affect at all.
Right. Well, I'll tell you, Bob, if you like, if anyone needs any legal experience inside the courtroom or to mediate and or litigate, give them your contact information, your office number, where you're located, and whatever it is that you'd like to tell them about your law practice.
Well, I practice primarily criminal defense law and civil rights law, and I'm at 2901 Evangela in Monroe, and I can be reached at 388-1700.
Well, I'll tell you, Bob, this is not it, because I know you will be heading up some races coming up in 2015, and I know 2016 with the presidential election coming on. I'd love to bring you back, and we'll talk politics the next go around, because I know that you're very privy in that particular area. I know what you do, and I thank you for all that you've done in the legal community. Not only that, trying to bring individuals as a uniter rather than a divider, and I love what you've done, and hopefully we can continue the relationship, and I'll let you have the final words to close out this segment.
The final words are: the court has spoken. We still have a long way to go, but the issues will be resolved with patience, and everyone should have respect for the law.
Okay, we have been listening to Mr. Bob Noel, attorney at law out of Monroe, Louisiana. Bob, thanks for coming on, and have a great night.
You too.
Okay. We're back broadcasting live with the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass on WMAD 24-hour global radio. We're going to take a short pause, listen to some of the Miracles. I second that emotion. I'll be right back.
Red and yellow, black and white, we are perfect in His sight. Jesus loves the little children of the world. That means he loves everyone on this earth and he made us all equal.
Children are born to love, not hate, so why teach them to hate? Children are born to see people, not their color. We are just born different with the different pigments of our skin. So don't teach your children to be racist.
We are back broadcasting live with the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass on WMAD 24-hour global radio. We've been talking to tonight's guest, Attorney Bob Noel, on same-sex marriages. Now, there are some who says that it violates natural law. And it goes on to say that marriage is not just any relationship between human beings. It is a relationship rooted in human nature and thus governed by natural law. Natural law's most elementary precept is that good is to be done and pursued, and evil is to be avoided. By his natural reasoning, man can perceive what is morally good or bad for him. Thus, he can know the end or purpose of each of his acts and how it is morally wrong to transform the means that help him accomplish an act into the act's purpose. Any situation which institutionalizes and circumvents of the purpose of the sexual act violates natural law and the objective norm or morality. Being rooted in human nature, natural law is universal and immutable. It applies to the entire human race equally. It commands and forbids constantly, everywhere and always. St. Paul taught in the epistle to the Romans that the natural law is inscribed on the heart of every man. And you can look that up in Romans 2:14 and 15. It also says that it always denies a child either a father or a mother. It is in the child's best interest that he or she be raised under the influence of his natural father and mother. This rule is confined by the evident difficulties faced by the many children who are orphans or are raised by a single parent, a relative, or a foster role model. Same-sex marriages ignores a child's best interest. Furthermore, it says it validates and promotes the homosexual lifestyle. In the name of the family, same-sex marriage serves to validate not only such unions, but the whole homosexual lifestyle in all its bisexual and transgender variants. Civil laws are structuring principles of man's life in society. As such, they play a very important and sometimes decisive role in influencing patterns of thoughts and behavior. They externally shape the life of society, but also profoundly modify everyone's perception and evaluation of forms and behavior. Civil laws, okay, when we look at the legal recognition of same-sex marriage, it would necessarily obscure certain basic moral values, devalue traditional marriage, and weaken public morality. Now, these are just some commentary. It's not a position that is being taken. So we need to make sure that everybody understand that we all are entitled to our own individual beliefs. However, as Attorney Noel indicated, that there is a slim to none chance that the law would change. Why? Because 37 of the 50 states had already had it to where same-sex marriages were in fact legal or about to become legal, which left the other 13 states, including those that are out there in the minority side. Now, when we look at it does not create a family, but a natural sterile union. We know that traditional marriages is usually so fecund that those who would frustrate its end must do violence to nature to prevent the birth of a child by using contraception. It naturally tends to create families On the contrary, same-sex marriage is intrinsically sterile. If the spouse wants a child, they must circumvent nature by costly and artificial means or employ surrogates. The natural tendency of such a union is not to create families. Therefore, we cannot call a same-sex union marriage and give it the benefits of a true marriage. Now, again, this is commentary being provided. We are not taking a position. We have our own personal position. But for those who are out there who are listening, tell a neighbor, tell a friend to tune in to the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass on WMAD 24-hour global radio. We're going to take a short pause and listen to a little Charlie Wilson, There Goes My Baby, and we'll be right back.
Rolling in my car when I pull up at the mall, couldn't find a place to park. Threw my keys to the valet. Handle it for me. I was only there to hang, wasn't looking for a thing. I was just about to bounce, and then I saw Miss Lady. Then I said to myself, destiny only is one for me. There go my baby. Look at her. Oh, she gon' be the one. We gon' fall in love. We gon' have some babies. Listen, she was coming up the shoe store, pretty little thing, a couple of bags in her hand, right in front of Macy's. That's where the pretty girls hang. Then I saw her at the food court, sipping lemonade, conversating on her cell phone, looking so amazing. And I said to myself, there she goes, there she goes, there she goes, yeah. Oh, well. Destiny only is one for me. There go my baby, there go my lady. Oh, she gon' be the one. We gon' fall in love. We're gonna have some babies, baby. She gon' wear my ring. She gon' take my name. Take her to the cookout. Give me a hug on hand. Take her to my mama house. Be pokey in there. If she need a hair done, see my cousin Ken. I'll treat her like a queen. Give her everything. She will be my girl till we old and gray. And I knew it from the moment that I saw her lovely.
Diversity, the state of having people who are different races or who have different cultures in a group or organization. Our number one goal at the Smoking Glass Hour is to create diversity. We believe diverse conversations with diverse groups of people makes America better. Listen to our broadcast on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Central Standard Time and Thursday nights at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. Diversity is the only way to go in 2015. And don't forget, tell a neighbor, tell a friend about the diversity on the Smoking Glass Hour.
Whisper to me softly, breathe words upon my skin. No one's near and listening, so please don't say goodbye. Just hold me close and love me. Press your lips to mine. Feels so right. Feels so right. Lying here beside you, I hear the echoes of your sighs. Promise me you'll stay with me and keep me warm tonight. So hold me close and love me. Give my heart a smile. Feels so right. Feels so right. Your body feels so gentle, and my passion rises high. You're loving me so easy. Your wish is my command. Just hold me close and love me. Tell me it won't end. Feels so right. Feels so right. Feels so right. Oh, you feel so right, baby.
We are back broadcasting live with the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass on WMAD 24-hour global radio. Tonight we've been talking to Attorney Bob Noel on same-sex marriages. It imposes its acceptance on all society is what some say. And some say by legalizing same-sex marriage, the state becomes its official and active promoter. The states call on public officials to officiate at the new civil ceremony, orders public schools to teach its acceptability to children, and punishes any state employee who expresses disapproval. If you notice, Attorney Noel and I, we touched on that particular area, and that was one of the specific reasons why I went to that, because some things you can see automatic. In the private sphere, objecting parents will see their children exposed more than ever to this new morality. Business offering wedding services will be forced to provide them for the same-sex union. And rental property owners will have to agree to accept same-sex couples as tenants. In every situation where marriage affects society, the state will expect Christians and all people of goodwill to betray their consciences by condoning, through silence or act, an attack on the natural order and Christian morality. And once again, Attorney Noel and I, we discussed those particular areas. Furthermore, others seem to appear and think that it is the cutting edge of sexual revelation. In the 1960s, we know, society was pressured to accept all kinds of immoral sexual relationships between men and women. Today, we see that a new sexual revolution where society is being asked to accept sodomy and same-sex marriages. This is what Psalm is saying. If homosexuality marriage is universally accepted as the present step in sexual freedom, what logical arguments can be used to stop the next step of incest, pedophilia, bestiality, and other forms of unnatural behavior? Indeed, radical elements of certain avant-garde subcultures are already advocating such things. The railroading of same-sex marriages on the American people make increasingly clear what homosexuality activist Paul Vernell wrote at one time. The gay movement, whether we acknowledge it or not, is not a civil rights movement, not even a sexual liberation movement, but a moral revolution aimed at changing people's views of homosexuality. And again, this is just commentary provided. The Smoking Glass Hour and WMAD has not taken a position other than our personal position, which has not been aired alive on broadcast. Now, the final point that I'd like to make, and I believe that a lot of people are falling into this particular category. And if so, then you can attest one way or the other. And it says that it offends God. This is the most important reason. Whenever one violates the natural moral order established by God, one sins and offends God. Same-sex marriages does just this. Accordingly, anyone who professes to love God must be opposed to it. Again, this is a position that's being taken by others. Marriage is not the creator. Marriage is not the creature of any state. Rather, it was established by God in paradise for our first parents, Adam and Eve. As we read in the book of Genesis, God created man in his own image. In the divine image, he created him. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them, saying, "Be fertile and multiply. Fill the earth and subdue it." You can find that somewhere around, I believe, Genesis, the first chapter, the 28th, 29th, somewhere up in there. The same was taught by our Savior Jesus Christ. From the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this cause, a man shall leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife. You can find that around Mark, the 10th chapter, the 6th through the 7th, 6th through the 8th verse, somewhere up in there. Now, Genesis also teaches us how God punished Sodom and Gomorrah for the sins of, some say, homosexuality. The Lord rained down fire upon Sodom and Gomorrah. He overthrew those cities and the whole plain, together with the inhabitants of the cities and the produce of the soil. Once again, you can find that in the book of Genesis, the 24th and the 25th chapter. We're going to pause one more time, and then we're going to come back and we're going to conclude the broadcast. We're going to let you listen to some sounds of Mr. Larry Graham, One in a Million. Here we go.
Love that played his games on me so long.
started to believe I'd never find anyone. Doubted, tried to convince me to give in. Said you can't win. But one day the sun came a-shining through. The rain had stopped and the skies were blue. And oh, what a revelation to see. Someone was saying I love you to me. A one in a million chance of a lifetime. And life showed compassion and sent to me a stroke of love all to you. A one in a million you. I was a lonely man with empty arms to fill. Then I found a piece of happiness to call my own. And life is worth living again. For to love you to me is to live. Oh, one in a million chance of a lifetime. And life showed compassion and sent to me a stroke of love called you. A one in a million you. A one in a million chance of a lifetime. And life showed compassion and sent to me a stroke of love called you. One in a million you. A one in a million you.
He wanted to be known for doing his best.
Sure, right.
His best made him Major League Baseball's most valuable player.
Strike two.
He played in 6 World Series and was elected to the Hall of Fame. Although an honest man, he was best at stealing home. But the best quality of Jackie Robinson's life was his character. So here's to you, Mr. Robinson. Thanks for passing it on. From the Foundation for a Better Life at Values.com.
Back broadcasting live with the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass on WMAD 24-hour global radio. Tonight we've been talking with Attorney Bob Noel on the same-sex marriage, the most recent ruling handed down by the United States Supreme Court. You can catch us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest, Google+, WordPress, and many other sites that's out there. You can also catch us for the live podcast if you go out to the Spreaker.com, search for the Smoking Glass Hour. If you have a smartphone, Android, I know iPhone, you can go to the podcast app and you can search for us there. And I believe the link has been posted on the fan page, which is the Smoking Glass Hour. Also, you can catch us each and every night. Thursday nights, of course, is local and state politics. So if you're out there listening, you can. We had a very good show last week with individuals participating and emailing, live chatting their questions in for different candidates or questions in general. So we want you to become a part of what's going on. We're not trying to be mainstream media, nor do we want to be mainstream media. As a matter of fact, we'd much rather just be on our own, blaze our own trail, and that's exactly what we're doing because our message is clear. We're trying to make a difference. And by touching on these topics and things that most people are afraid to touch on, I want to say this before I go. Got a chance to meet an individual today again, a little bit longer. I have had the opportunity to meet a lot of highly, highly, highly educated people. But usually when you meet somebody that's highly educated, they're missing that other component, which is common sense. Today I met an individual who I put on the top two, if not the top one, list of all-time intellectual people with the ability to cross over and understand other people's ability, even if they don't go as far as he. Dr. Riley Breton, which is one of the natives of Louisiana, retired professor out of the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, which I am a Duke Blue Devil, so we have that issue alone. But we are good friends. We're working on some other things. I want to thank the other individuals, Miss Lorraine, along with Glenn Beck, who stopped in today. We had a long chat. We were able to reminisce and talk about a lot of things that are going on in this country. The one thing that you should not fail to do is have a conversation about these complex issues, because before it's over with, these are just the beginning of sorrows. Okay, and you have to understand, but in order to understand, you must be willing to share common interests, common goals, and talk about things, even though they may be stopped. They may not be, in a good position to do that, but you cannot be afraid to do it. So I want to thank everybody for listening in to the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass on WMAD 24-hour Global Radio. And once again, if you're out there listening and you want to be alarmed or alerted as to when we are having a live show, which is each and every day, you can text us at 81010 and enter into the subject line the @ WMAD, and that will send a link to me, and I will be able to send you a message indicating that there's a live broadcast at such and such time and what's going on. So tell a neighbor, tell a friend. We're on the move in 2015 on the Smoking Glass Hour with Baron Glass on WMAD 24-hour Global Radio. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great night.